Finally! I'm so excited! Welcome back to my YouTube channel, guys. My name is Hannah Bayer. If you don't already know me, I love anything and everything about fitness and books, because today we're going to be doing our first ever YouTube video on my favorite reads for 2024. I'm so excited. I've recently gotten into reading I started reading halfway through 2023. And it has just been the best freaking hobby that I have picked up. Maybe not for my bank account or my husband's, but it has been such a lovely hobby. I just really enjoy fantasy books. And today we're going to talk about my top 10 fantasy books of 2024, which I'm just so excited. So some of these books are standalones, some of them are starters to a series, and then some of them are a whole series just in general. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Let me put it in order first. So we have The Cruel Prince. Now this is my 10, 9, and 8 book. We're gonna count down basically to the number one. But these, I loved this series. I thought this series was so good. This is a YA series. The world is really dark. I was not expecting it to be that dark for a YA series. I feel like I'm continuously surprised by YA series and how great they are. But The Cruel Prince is basically about Jude. She is a human and she goes into fairyland, essentially, or fairyland, I guess. The fae world is absolutely brutal. It's just like, it's so brutal. But I will say, I really love Holly Black's writing. I think it's so whimsical and it's so creative and imaginative that when I am like reading this, I am just seeing like the most interesting, like intricate characters that bring just like a lot of, I guess, diversity to the books and everything. Book one is quite a wild ride. You really get to know how brutal the world is within the first 2 chapters. You also find out about what happens to Jude's family, and it's brutal. So, book one is pretty good. There isn't really a lot of romance, however. There's like a sprinkling, but it's not like a lot, if that makes sense. Book 2 is The Wicked King, and this book is my favorite out of the entire series. I thought this book really made the series. It was so good, very fast paced. There's a cliffhanger at the end. You're like, what the heck? You're really rooting for Jude and, you know, her boo thing. But I'm not gonna spoil it because I hate it when people spoil things for me or like say the names and I'm like, no, I just wanted like the premise of the story. But very action-packed, super good. Brutal Feyland. Kind of dives in a little bit deeper to, you know, the trouble that she has with her non-biological dad, and just kind of the relationship that they have. Now, last book is Queen of Nothing, again with the relationship with her dad type thing. Very hard. You can definitely see that she's wanting his approval on a lot of things. She's wanting to kind of, you know, be the daughter that he wants, but also she hates him at the same exact time. And for me, I just like really gravitated towards Jude's character because she's just so authentic and she comes with a lot of plot twists. So you never really know what Jude is actually going to do until she does it and you're like, what the heck is happening? This was definitely one of those books. Now, I will say this is a little bit slower than the second one, but it was still a really good book and it finishes off strong. Ugh. Looking at these books, I don't know how I finished all of these so fast, but we finished all 3 of these books within a span of 2 months. So, this is the Crescent City series. Let's talk about book 1. Book 1 follows Bryce Quinlan through this like fantasy, fae / human realm. They are coexisting, fae and humans. Then you have a sprinkling of also other species in there as well, and it is very interesting. It's really fun. This series is totally different than any of the other series that Sarah has done, and I really liked how different it was because it made for such an entertaining read. got murder mystery, you got a little bit of sprinkling of a love story in there. There's a ton of lore, so I would definitely recommend tabbing. If you're not super into tabbing, almost think like making sure that you're really paying attention to the content that you're reading, because it all comes back full force and ties in together towards the end. Because we all know Sarah J. Maas loves a good cliffhanger, and she loves a good plot twist at the last 100 to 200 pages of her books. And this one definitely did not disappoint. I think this one out of the series is my number 2. Yet again, book 2 is my number 1. Book 2 just had so many plot twists. You really get into the nitty-gritty details that you didn't get in book 1. There's so much character development. There's just so much going on. Book 2, you get multiple POVs. There's also way more romance in this one. If you're reading the Crescent City for the romance, I wouldn't recommend reading it. If you're reading it for action, adventure, fantasy, super cool new world, I would totally recommend this series to you. The first book has basically no smut that I can remember. I don't really think anything happens. Book 2, there is some smut. It definitely, things start to heat up for sure. I really loved this book. I think this book was my top favorite one out of all of them, just because I really enjoyed the lore at the very end. There's so many plot twists at the very end, and there's definitely a lot of golden nuggets that I tagged here and there, and then when it tied in at the end, I was like, yes, I knew it was gonna happen like that. But to be fair, I didn't know it was gonna happen like that. So if you've read the series, you already know what I'm talking about. Book 2 was crazy. And then book 3, they are just huge. They, like, come on, that is... Also, can we just take a minute for how pretty my tabs are? I did that. I did that, and I read the whole thing all by myself. I am not a fan of Bryce. I kind of thought she was rude, and she's pretty cruel. I wouldn't say that she was my favorite character in this, but I did really enjoy... There's some crossovers in this book, and I loved the crossovers. I ate that crap up. It was too good, I fear. So there was that. But you kind of learn why Bryce is the way that she is at the end of the book. But to me, I feel like she still could have kind of been a bit kinder. That's besides the point. The ending, I felt like it was a bit abrupt. However, it was still good. I'm not gonna say I hated it, because I usually love everything that Sarah writes. She's, I think, writing a 4th book at some point, or there's gonna be a 4th book, or maybe, I don't know. But I'm curious to kind of see where the story goes, because I feel like this definitely ended like it could have been done. But if she's gonna add another one, I'm always down for a good time when it comes to Sarah's books. This one, I almost didn't want to include it, but I'm going to, because it definitely was a top read for me personally. This is coming in at number 4. This is coming in at number 4. Hunting Adeline. If you read this book, you know why, but if you haven't read this book, this was my first ever dark romance. And I did read the trigger warnings, and I didn't think it was that bad. I think I was going into it with it just being like, just crazy, erratic, crazy stuff. It wasn't as bad as what I was thinking, but it was really good. I definitely say, I would say that this was a good intro to dark romance for me personally. The book basically starts off with Adeline is your main character, but she moves back to an old relative that has passed away's home. And this home is like super gothic. It's kind of haunted. There's like some ghosts or spooky stuff going on. And then we also have Zaid. Zaid is a lot of things. The first thing he is a stalker. So he becomes obsessed with Adeline. He's a tracker for human traffickers. Biggest one, best one out of everybody. Nobody knows who he is. He's incognito all the time. And he kind of runs this business off of, you know, finding human traffickers and busting them and putting them in jail. So he loves Zaid. but he has a darker side, and that side, you will have to find out. So I only bought book 1. I read book 2 on the Kindle. I was not a fan. I finished it and it was okay. It was so dark, and it's not, you don't really get any more romance in it, really. Like, you do at the end, but it's just really dark. I would definitely make sure you read your trigger warnings. It's very heavy in the human trafficking world, so if you're very sensitive to that stuff, I would not recommend you read it. This book doesn't really dive into that world as much. It does a little bit. It's definitely very violent. It's definitely very graphic, but it's not as bad as book 2. But this book, We got book 8, which is The Poisoner. So let's just take a minute and look at how pretty she is, because I did actually purchase this book because of how stunning it is. We have stark white pages. We have a matte cover. She's gorgeous. We love her. This follows Alina, and Alina is a botanist and also has a little hobby for poisoning people on the side. We also have Silas, and Silas is a vampire. He is also a stalker, and he becomes obsessed with Alina. And their journey together is quite delicious, might I add. This book was really fun to read. Definitely quite a few trigger warnings, so definitely read through those before you start the book, but I loved it. I loved it, I love it, I love it. This is book 1 in, I don't know how many books we're gonna get, but I think she's working on book 2 right now, but she just recently came out with book 1, I wanna say in 2024. So good, absolutely love it, so good. Would highly recommend. I loved this little short read. It was chef's kiss. All right, we got number 9, which is Quicksilver. I feel like this has been on everybody's TBR as of recently for a good reason, because it is such a great book. But this follows Ceres, and she is a cute little girly pop just living her life in this awful human world. And the human world kind of reminded me a little bit of Dune, because they're basically in this desert. Water is rationed to basically nothing. So they're kind of forced to steal, essentially, from other places. And it gets pretty crazy. This is one of those books where you really don't know where it's going, because as soon as you turn the page, you're like, where is this? What is going on? Who is that? And I love books that make me question everything, and the plot just thickens the more that you read, and it's just so flippin' good. I absolutely devoured this. I read this on Kindle because the hardcover was not available on Amazon during that time. So she was getting it published, I believe, and then everything got re-released. So I wasn't able to actually get a copy until a few months later after reading the book. And I can't wait till she finishes book 2 so that way I can get that one too. I think book 2 is coming kind of towards the end of this year. We don't really have a date. We might have a month, but I don't think we have a date on the second book of Quicksilver. Absolutely loved it. Romance, the banter, oh yeah, baby. It's all in here, and I loved it. She is a thick girl, but it doesn't seem that thick because there's just so much going on, and you're left wondering, what the heck? There's multiple worlds as well, and there's Fae. Need I say more? My last one, number 1 book of 2024. Nothing has compared to this book. This book changed my life. I mean, it didn't really, but it changed what romance does to me. I cried for an hour after finishing this book. I posted about it nonstop on TikTok, on Instagram. I've tried to convert everybody that I know to read this book because it is just so good. And without further ado, tear it down. This book is so good. She's huge. When I got this in the mail, I was like, I don't know if I want to read this book. I don't know. if I want to read it, because look at the print. The print is like teensy weensy, but let me tell you, as soon as you start this book, you are just left wondering and questioning everything after every single chapter, and every single chapter just gets better. If you love a good slow burn, this is the slowest burn you will ever read, and it is the slowest, bestest burn ever that I've ever read, and nothing will compare. Nothing will compare. So the book starts out with Miss Darcy O'Sullivan. She gets a letter in the mail from her father, and her father is dead. And she's never met her father, her biological father. She has been growing up with the nuns, and she goes and sees the two head nuns. She's like, do I go? I've never even met my father. And they're like, you should totally go, because, you know, your inheritance is at stake as well. So she's like, yeah, I might as well just like go for the inheritance. Like, let's see where things go, you know? She makes it to the town, and boy, does weird things start happening. It's spooky, it's mystery, it's scary. There's a love triangle, there's crazy stuff going on constantly. If you've read this book, the funeral scene, which is at the beginning of this book, the funeral scene, I was like, what am I reading right now? It is so, so good. And man, does the plot thicken. I wasn't going to tab this book, and I think it's pretty obvious that I immediately was like, I need to tab this book because it is just so good. And the romance is just incredible. It's so beautiful. The story is just nothing like I've ever read. It's an incredible story. And I love Darcy. I love the main character. She's incredible. Also love the male character. Oh my gosh, he is just so amazing. He's so kind. He's so good to her. Oh, there's so many great things. In fact, I'm going to read you a quote from the book because I had to journal it. I had to vent about my amazing experience with this book, and I feel like you should hear this as well. All right, so one of my favorite top quotes is, "You will never kneel before anyone, Darcy. If anything, the world will kneel in front of you." I would have waited an eternity for you. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. Just read the book. The book is so good. The book is chef's kiss. Also, super cute reading journal. If you would like the link down below. I absolutely love this journal. I think it's so great. I've been documenting all of my top reads so far. So I have this one, I have Anathema. I need to do Fourth Wing, but I have to reread it. And I've also done, which one else? I think I did The Poisoner as well. The Poisoner was very, very good. But I absolutely love it. It basically, it just makes it a little bit easier for when you are maybe reading a series and you don't want to read the entire book. I do like a little summary over here and then like all of my favorite quotes. And then there's also another page where you can like color in all of the fun little stars and date it and say, you know, like if you loved the book, if you hated the book. So fun. I really love this. It's just so nostalgic to me. It's very aesthetically pleasing as well, the way everything's kind of just like seamlessly set up. So definitely another little fun side hobby along with reading is my book journaling as well. All right, guys, that basically wraps up today's top 10 for 2024 books that I've read. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you love this as much as I love this. And I really tried to not spoil it too much for y'all in case you are interested in these books and you actually want to read them. I hope that you have a lovely rest of your day filled with fitness, fashion, and reading. Maybe a little bit of journaling sprinkled in there as well. But I will see you guys next time, and thank you. Bye.